Hey, I'm Dan and I'm learning how to skate again as an adult, as many of you are, and man do I wish that I had the energy in my legs to just pick up any old heavy skateboard and learn tricks quickly. But the reality is that my legs are old and I only have so many flicks left in my ankles. And so I want to choose wisely how I use the time that I have. Honestly, I'm thankful for every day that I get to skate. It really is a gift. So I've been experimenting with really light boards to see if there's a setup that's particularly light that would work well for me and allow me to get more out of the time that I have. So we're going to dial back about 2 months ago. I'll show you what I was looking at. All right, I have 5 different set of skateboards to show you. Actually, this is the lightest of all of them. The heaviest of all of them, we'll call this our standard board. This is probably what you would start with, when you're starting out. 8-inch board, 32 inches wide, 14¼ inch wheelbase. You throw some indie standards on there, some 52 or 53 millimeter wheels. All right, something like that's going to weigh in at about 2,400 grams. We'll call that our standard. And honestly, pretty quickly I realized not to be messing around with that because I'm not going down huge staircases or giant handrails or something. Like, I'm learning flat ground and short ledges. I don't need that much strength in a skateboard, and I don't have the muscles to learn tricks on something that's that heavy. So another board that I've used is this Uber Light setup. You might remember this from a review video that I did. This is with V-Hollow Light Ventures, so it's a much lighter truck at 320 some grams compared to that 380 some indie standard. So that whole setup, that board itself is actually not that light, but we'll call that a light setup. That whole setup comes in at 2296 grams, 2300 grams, right? So about 4% lighter. Then if you're going to go slightly lighter, this is a setup that I've been doing for the last 6 months. Really like it. It's a real oval board, 8¼ It actually measures 8 3/8. It feels like an 8½. So it's a pretty big board, 8¼ inch indie titanium forged. So these are also a pretty light truck. As far as the spectrum of trucks go, those are at 320 to 330. Those are kind of on the light end, and indie standard at 380, 390 is kind of on the heavy end. Now, a board that you might consider to be really, really light is something like this 7¼ inch board that belongs to my daughter. It's an Enjoy Complete. It's really small, right? It's a small board. And this thing weighs in at, what, just 2038 grams, 2038 grams. So that's 15% lighter than that standard board, whereas the oval was 5% lighter, the Uber Light was 4% lighter, but that 7¼ inch board is 15% lighter. And you go, man, so learn tricks on that. Well, it's pretty small, and it's kind of difficult to learn tricks on that. But I had an old board from Revive. It was a Jonny Giger board that I bought a couple of years ago, and I'd already skated it out, and it had pressure cracks all over it, but I was using it as a carpet board, and it was so light. The deck itself weighing in at like 1070 or 1080 or so, that I thought, well, let's throw that on some super light trucks. So I got these Mag Lights, which are really light at 260 grams, right? A very light truck. And I put it on this really light board. And sure enough, when you put this whole thing together, it's 2032. So also 15% lighter than that standard board. So it's actually just a hair lighter than that 7¼ inch. And it's a full 8-inch setup. 8-inch setup with like a 31½ inch, 31 3/8 inch. What type of a scientific experiment can we do to figure out if this is useful or not, right? Day one, when you step on it, you're like, wow, what a weird feeling board. It's so light. And what I did was I had 2 identical setups. Sorry, not identical setups. I had 2 setups. I had the Giger with Mag Lights, and I had the reel with the indie forged titaniums. And every time I was working on something, I just looked to see which one of these did I naturally reach for, right? So if I'm doing ledge tricks, I'm reaching for this guy. If I'm doing rail tricks, I'm reaching for this guy. It's quarter pipes, right? Pretty much anything at the park, manuals. But if I'm working on kickflips, reaching for this guy. Varial kickflip, yeah, absolutely the light deck. A varial heel flip, the light deck. And so what I found was that anything that had a lot of rotation or flipping in it, I was reaching for the Giger deck. Anything that was like going fast around the park and hitting an obstacle, I was reaching for the larger oval deck. And I found that to be generally true. And so I'm treating the Giger deck as kind of a trainer, if you will, to learn some trick and then transfer it over to the larger deck. And the whole point there is if you're going to be putting in 50 or 100 repetitions of a trick in a session, you're going to get totally worn out if you're on that heavier, larger deck. But if you use the lighter deck, then it's all about precision and foot placement and muscle movement, and you find that you have to think a little bit more and scale everything down a little bit more on the lighter deck, but then it responds very well. You don't have to just, you know, muscle the whole thing out. So really happy with that, and I thought, okay, let's film some stuff. And I've been working on kickflips, have an upcoming kickflip video that I'm working on, and this happened to the Giger deck. Oh. Yeah, so yeah, that happened. And not really surprised, because I had already fully skated that thing out a couple of years ago, and I knew it was, you know, past its normal life. And honestly, it held on much longer than I sort of expected it to. So, hey, let me buy a new one and make a new setup. So I bought a new Giger deck, and just came in, and I went up slightly in size to an 8 1/8, and it came in, and it's heavy. It's not light at all. It's heavy. This thing weighs like 1270 grams. It's really heavy. It's from Revive. It's, you know, what you would expect from a low-cost deck supplier. So what I also got was a new reel board. Grab this guy. Also an 8 1/8. And this guy is also not light at like 1260 grams, but it's a 14-inch wheelbase, 8 1/8, and it's a little shorter. So this guy is almost exactly the same size as the old 8-inch Giger deck that I had. And the new 8 1/8-inch Giger deck is almost the same size as the black oval deck that I have from Reel. So what I'm probably going to do moving forward is set up this red oval board on the Mag Lights and see what it feels like to have kind of a quality, but not that light 8 1/8 on some really light trucks. So that's what I'll do for the next few weeks, and I'll check back in and let you know if I think that's a good setup moving forward. Okay, so one more non-scientific data point. After I broke that Giger deck, I was at the skate park the next time with just this black oval deck, the 8 1/4, and I didn't do any flat ground at all. I just had zero desire. It felt like I was gonna have to try too hard, and I just wasn't interested in putting in that much effort. So immediately after that, I put together the red oval deck. This is the 8 1/8, 14-inch wheelbase with the Mag Lights. This thing is really nice. It weighs in at 2168, so that's 9% lighter than that Indy setup. Remember, the Giger plus Mag Lights was 15% lighter, so it's not quite as light as the Giger plus Mag Lights setup was, but it skates really nice. It's a little bit closer to a normal skateboard, but it's still on the light end of things. So I'm heading out to do a flat ground session right now, and this is the only deck I'm bringing, so I'm starting to really enjoy it. All right, the verdict is in. After a couple of months, really several months of experimenting with very light boards, there is something that is too light. So using this super lightweight Giger deck with the Mag Lights is just too light. I could use it as a trainer board, but I honestly didn't want to do any other sort of real skating with it, which is why I love this setup. This is the real oval deck at 8 1/8 with the Mag Lights on it. So it's, you know, kind of a standard heavy board in the mid 1200s. It's an 8 1/8, 31 5/16 inch long with a 14-inch wheelbase. Now, what works really well here is the weight is in the deck, not in the trucks. So kind of like when you see a figure skater or a snowboarder, they want to spin quickly, they bring their weight into the center of gravity. They want to spin more slowly, they move their weight out. Same thing here, when you're flipping a board, since the weight is in the deck, not in the trucks, or in the wheels in this case, because I also have pretty small wheels on here, then it makes it easy to rotate and flip around, but it also gives you a nice solid feel when you're riding the board. So what do I have? I've got the 8-inch Mag Lights. These are Spitfire Classic Formula 4s. What else is there to know about this guy? When I got him, he was actually fairly steep and concave, like 23-degree nose and tail, and a 1/2-inch concave. It was number 2 in the stack. It's flattened out a little bit over time, and so now it rides really nicely. I have found that if I'm going someplace to skate, I'm only taking one board, I will take this. I don't think of it as my light skateboard anymore. I just think of it as my skateboard. But if I'm going to be at the park and I know I'm going to be hitting banks and quarter pipes and ledges and things, then I'm still definitely going to take this guy, which is the 8 1/4 with the indies on it. It is more stable and it is more fun to ride around the park, honestly. Now, I got to admit, I learned a couple of things through this process. One is I think I now understand why the Uber Light weighs what it does. Because the deck here is in that same mid 1200s as those real boards. And when you couple this with Mag Lights, that actually makes a lot of sense. So that's probably why Rodney Mullen did it that way. So it's a super strong board. I rode this for 6 months. It honestly never gave up at all. Still has lots of pop, still rides great. I just kind of got tired of the shape and I wanted to try something else. And so it's a super strong board that lasts a super long time, not that light, but when you couple it with Mag Lights, that's a pretty good overall weight ratio, and it still feels like a real skateboard. Now, one thing that I do miss, I gotta be honest, is I miss when I'm riding and I mess up some trick and I look down and I've done 50 or 100 or 200 attempts at something, and I look down and I see Jonny Giger's name on the board, and I think to myself of those videos where he's done hundreds, if not thousands of attempts to land some crazy, incredible flat ground, and that provides some motivation, right, to get up and keep going at it. And that motivation isn't there because I'm not using this deck anymore, because frankly, it was too light. So hey, what about the new deck? Why not use the new deck? Because I already just said that a deck that's kind of heavier with the really light Mag Lights is a good deal, right? So let's look at that real quick. All right, so my issues with the new deck is that I found that 8-inch is just a little too narrow for me. I have size 10.5 shoes in the US, I'm a 6-foot guy. And so I really needed to be slightly more than that, and 8 1/8 was kind of the perfect size for me. That reel that measures 8 3/8 starts to feel too big. And so this board, I was pretty excited to get it at 8 1/8. The problem is it has a 14 3/8 inch wheelbase. So the wheelbase is too big. And the overall length of it is 31 9/16. And so it's a pretty big wheelbase for trying to do flat ground tricks on. So it's kind of more of a park board with that long wheelbase. And if I already had those tricks down pat, sure, no big deal. But because I'm trying to learn them, that 14-inch wheelbase that the old Giger board had and that the red real board have, those are very, very helpful for me as I'm trying to learn rotation tricks. I think that's it. I've talked a lot. I hope this is helpful for you. Where I've landed is that red reel board and that black reel board. I'm gonna stick with those for a while. I've been really happy with that setup. It works well for me as I'm learning tricks. And now that I've got that figured out, kind of dialed in, I'm hopefully gonna just stick with that and use that as I'm trying to learn these tricks. Good luck to you as you're figuring this out for yourself, and I wish you the best. Let's get out there and skate again.